So I'm like, why bother? Because it looks like I look like a clown.
Okay, before we get started, we have just a few announcements. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us here for Conversations with CAGT. A few really quick announcements fast. Thank you to everybody who volunteered at NAGC and attended NAGC. We all had a wonderful time and we hope you did too, learning and networking and just having a great time, whether you were able to make it in person or virtually. Hopefully it was just a wonderful, rejuvenating time for you all. We are from CAGT looking to clean up our membership. You should have received an email today to fill out some important information, updating your contact information. If for some reason we don't hear from you by Saturday, December 18th, we will be removing your contact from our database. So please make sure if you have not already filled out that survey to update your contact information, that you do that before December 18th. We also have some preliminary information for our CAGT annual legislative day. It's up on our website, and we will have some information coming out tomorrow via email to our members and to our friends. The main event is for 9th to 12th graders, and it will be virtual, but barring any restrictions at the Capitol, we will have a special senior day. The essay prompt is posted so people can start preparing, and then the registration will open directly after winter break. So we're excited for that legislative day. It's always a pretty amazing day. If you haven't been a part of it before, highly suggest that we are always looking for volunteers for that as well. And if you know any students 9th through 12th grade who are interested in government and politics, that you check it out with them and see if they want to participate, because it really is a really great day. So I'm going to go ahead and start recording. And it is my pleasure. My name is Dr. Colleen Ehrlich. I am the president of the Colorado Association for Gifted and Talented, CAGT. Tonight we are here with Connolly Sherwood, who will be presenting on Living 2E. So just a little bit about Connolly. So Connolly is the gifted specialist for Sheridan School District No. 2. She is the president of SOME, which is a CAGT affiliate. She serves on CDE's GE-SAC, which is the Gifted Educational State Advisory Committee. She is a member of CAEGTC, which is the Colorado Academy of Educators for the Gifted, Talented, and Creative, and owns a private practice that supports learners who have dyslexia and ADHD. Connolly is married and raising a 2E child. She delights in birding, being creative, spending time with friends and family, and traveling. So welcome, Connolly. We're so excited to hear what you have to share with us today.
Thank you so much, Colleen. I really appreciate the introduction. Thank you so much for joining me today. This is my first ever live Facebook anything, so I'm super nervous. And Living 2E, that's definitely so me. And so this is going to be a challenge because I'm going to be running a slideshow in front of me and next to me so I can see my notes so I don't forget anything. So I thought this would be a good topic because I think actually experiencing and living twice exceptional is it's a different way of life, and it's chaotic, but also very rewarding. Previously, there we go. Previously, with Conversations with CAGT, there was a one on April 21st in 2021 by Bobby Gilman from the Gifted Center up in Westminster, recognizing twice exceptional children, observable characteristics. So if you want to go back and look at that one for more information about 2E, if you haven't seen it. And they also had a checklist for recognizing twice exceptional children that's available that you'll be able to also access. And then there was another presentation by Susan Baum from the Bridges Center in California, and she's talking about when an IEP is not enough, a suite of tools approach for strength-based, talent-focused education, which is actually one of the things that has been peer-reviewed and researched is using a strength-based approach to support 2E students, which is really important. And I'll touch on that a little bit later. So what is 2E? For those of you who maybe aren't familiar with it, 2E by the state of Colorado is defined as a student who's identified as gifted, as well as having a disability of some sort. And hang on just a sec, I have to get to my other notes here. So what's interesting about this is that 2E students have been recognized for more than 2 decades, but there was not an agreed upon definition for twice exceptional until 2013, when a group calling themselves the National Commission on Twice Exceptional Education developed an inclusive and research-based definition for 2E students. This is available in one of the Gifted Child Quarterly magazines through NAGC in 2014. So if you want to check that out, you can go back and look at the actual article. And basically a summary is 2E children who demonstrate remarkable strengths in one area and conversely disabling weaknesses in others. And I'm saying children in this case, but this also goes for adults too, because I'm 2E and I definitely have this, where I've got really great strengths and some very big weaknesses. One of my biggest weaknesses, for example, is organization and planning for things. So when I was asked to do this demonstration, what you're seeing is a very 2E unpolished version, because I did not allow for enough time to actually get this done the way I would have liked to, in spite of the fact that I started it last week, then brainstormed a whole bunch of information I wanted to include, and then thinking it might take me 4 hours yesterday to put together a PowerPoint. I actually worked for 10, 11, 12, 13 hours nonstop, with the exception of getting coffee and a snack. And I still didn't finish what I wanted to finish, because I want to make sure it's just right. And I'm doing it so that I will not look unintelligent or uninformed. So that's part of the 2E complex too, that I've experienced personally, and that feeling of not being good enough, because some things come super easy and other things are very challenging. So in Colorado, the Department of Education, we identify kids for gifted identification and general intellectual ability, specific academic aptitudes such as reading, writing, math, science, social studies, and world languages. And then we have specific talent aptitudes. That would be visual arts, performing arts, music, dance, psychomotor, creative or productive thinking, and leadership. And I think Colorado is pretty outstanding in terms of identifying gifted students in academic and talent aptitude areas. And we're far ahead many of the other states. So it's really a rewarding place to be if you're a gifted student, because you're recognized. Also, the Colorado Department of Education's disability areas are as follows, which would be autism spectrum disorder, deafblindness, developmental delay, hearing impairment, including deafness, infant toddler with a disability, intellectual disability, multiple disabilities, orthopedic impairment, other health impaired, serious emotional disability, specific learning disability, speech or language impairment, traumatic brain injury, visual impairment, including blindness. And with the exception of the intellectual disability, the rest of these all can qualify for a 2E qualification. Why is it difficult to identify twice exceptional students? They're difficult to identify and support because they possess characteristics of gifted students, characteristics of students with disabilities, and the characteristics can mask one another, where either you look gifted and disabilities don't show up because you're masking them through your strengths. And sometimes the disabilities are only noted and no one sees the gifted portion. And sometimes neither one are identified because the student just looks completely average. Let's see. So my gifted journey began when I was in Michigan in 2nd grade, and there was a magnet school put together for my district, and I was not invited to participate for 3rd grade. I had definite scores that would have qualified me for it on the ITBS, Iowa Test of Basic Skills, but my classwork was not commensurate with what I was able to produce on the test. And so my parents thought that wasn't right, and they intervened on my behalf. Therefore, I ended up spending 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade in a self-contained, gifted, multi-age classroom. And that was kind of my whole experience with gifted education as a child. I do remember it being frustrating because I wasn't always getting things the way I wanted. And I spent a lot of time in the classroom doing things I wasn't supposed to be doing, like creating a classroom newspaper. And I created little in the bookshelf behind me with those little eraser toppers. I called them eraser people. And I created little houses for them in my bookcase behind my desk. And I also had an eraser cleaning company. So I was very busy doing all kinds of things in class, just not the academics. So in 2007, my son was born. And in 2009, we started into the world of special education through Child Find in Denver Public Schools, because my son had some articulation challenges, and we were out and about, and he, instead of saying the word truck, substituted the TR for the sound of, and that came out really loud and clear. And I was, oh my gosh. So we called Child Find because we were noticing articulation. He was also not developing as much language as we were expecting him to, based on what we could tell he knew receptively. So through Child Find, he was identified with articulation disorder. And then eventually we found out that he didn't have protective extension, which is when you fall, you put your hands out. And my son, it was completely absent. So when he would fall, he would land on his head, and it had multiple head injuries and some traumatic brain injuries as well. So we ended up getting qualification services for speech language and OT when he was under 3. And then later in 2012, we had him looked at for gifted identification, and he qualified as highly gifted. And, but we didn't really move forward with any of that piece because we were more concerned at that point about the disability piece. And I look back now and I really wish that I would have focused more on that strength-based piece, because I think we spent so much time doing OT and PT and eventually feeding group and sensory processing support and vision therapy. All the while we weren't necessarily supporting him as much as we could have with his strength areas, because I was so concerned about remediating, because I didn't want him to struggle in school like the way I remember struggling. So after he was identified as gifted, again, not much was done with it. And then it was shortly thereafter that Gail Stein did a presentation at the school district I worked in that got me back into gifted. And I ended up being a classroom cluster teacher, which was great. And then a handful of years later, I ended up taking the road less traveled, which is learning about twice exceptionality, because I wasn't aware of it until that time. And then here. So let's see, got to run my thing here. So typically when we think of disabilities, this is kind of what we think of. We think of the vision ones that we can see, but this is really what disabilities can look like, which is that. My family. And it's nothing you can see that's obvious. It's some of the behaviors you might notice, but you wouldn't look at us and go, oh, there's disabilities. And I think that's one of the other things that makes being twice exceptional particularly difficult, is that there is probably not as much understanding for some of the differences that happen when you have an atypical brain. Many 2E students are considered or accused of being lazy and unmotivated, which creates feelings of failure, self-doubt, and low self-esteem. And I would say this is very true. And some of this in particular contributes to imposter syndrome. I remember that in high school, I ended up earning an academic letter on my senior year, which you got for having good grades and being on the honor roll. And there was a banquet that we were invited to, my parents, and they were going to present the academic letters. And the whole time leading up to and throughout the banquet, I was terrified that someone was going to say, oh, this is a mistake. You really didn't get this. So it's that inconsistently being able to count on your brain to perform when it's supposed to. And it does really lead to that self-doubt piece where you're like, I'm not sure if I'm really capable or qualifying to do this anyway. So that's one of the things I think, again, when you're focusing on remediation so much and not focusing on some of the strengths, that you end up with a child who can have some very big self-doubt, low self-esteem, or being worried about failing all the time. So this is my son, and this is what he thinks teachers should know about him.
Homework's hard for me just because it's the different places. At school, I feel like I should be working. At home, playing. Also, definitely fidgets. Those are very important to me. And also doing less group projects, because I prefer to work alone.
So, and my son is identified as 2E, and those are things that he really thinks are important for him to be successful in school. This is about 3 years ago. So things have maybe changed a little bit, but not a whole lot. So peer-reviewed research in terms of accommodations for twice exceptional students, startlingly, from 1975 to 2011, there are only 33 articles published regarding twice exceptionality in 3 official journals. These are peer-reviewed articles. They were in Gifted Child Quarterly, Exceptional Children Journal for Education of the Gifted. And then in 2011, there was an empirical investigation of twice exceptionality. Where have we been and where are we going? It describes a reality that is true today as it was nearly a decade ago, that while there's an increase of 2E, yet less is known about the effective treatments and interventions that simultaneously highlight strengths and accommodate areas of growth. And that's a very frustrating place to be for 2E people. 2E by the numbers, approximately 6% of students identified with a learning disability are twice exceptional. Based on research in the United States, 14% of children identified as gifted could also have a learning disability. And in 2018 in Colorado, we had about 7.3% of the public school population identified as gifted. And of those, 6.84% were also identified as twice exceptional. So Colorado, again, a nice place to be in terms of we're recognizing that we have twice exceptional students in our public schools and starting to taking care of how to support their needs. The peer review research that I did find regarding implementation of strength-based model for students who are 2E is really important. And that's the one intervention that was consistently able to support 2E students. I will mention that the Colorado Department of Education has a wonderful opportunity for teachers and parents, interested parties, through their Twice Exceptional program, where they have free classes so you can learn more about what it is to be twice exceptional and how to support them. And I would strongly encourage parents to do that. I took those classes and it really helped me understand what twice exceptional was. I will provide links for that later. So one of the things we have done is we try to build on strengths for my son. So these are some of the things that he's been interested in passionately throughout the years. Odd little things like Brexit. That was a very important topic of information and conversation in our house for quite a while. Percy Jackson books, The Lightning Thief, etc. And in fact, although my son is identified as having dyslexia, he does read, but he does ear reading through Learning Ally, Audible books, and Bookshare. And he spent one summer reading so much Percy Jackson books, so many, that he was able to win an award from Learning Ally for reading the most minutes out of any student in the United States, because he was so deeply into the Percy Jackson, and we were able to give him access to that content. So one of the things I think is most important to also know about the twice exceptional students are the affective needs, which I touched on earlier, about feeling discouraged or having low self-esteem or being worried about failure. These are things that are specific based on research that I found that twice exceptional students really need support in. They need support in how to make friends, emotional regulation, handling the stigma associated with being 2E, executive functioning, and a growth mindset to offset the fear of failure. And these are things that definitely should be supported specifically for twice exceptional students. Not that all students wouldn't benefit, but 2E students need this. This is at the SANG conference in 2016. We were able to attend, which was really fantastic. And it was there I learned a lot of things. One of them I learned was that parents with twice exceptional children have a higher rate of divorce, which is not surprising because there's a lot of stress on the family relationship when you have a 2E child trying to figure out things. And so knowing that we have to work a little bit harder in our marriage also is an important factor to consider when you're raising a twice exceptional child. You can't see it in these pictures, but my son was totally, I don't even know the word, refusing to go in and even participate in this entire experience. And Dr. Kate Bechtel, she actually was able to get down on his level and speak with him so that he was calmed down, and then he was able to participate for the day. And so what you see is a happy looking kid here. And then Dr. Webb, it was incredible. We had asked if we could get a picture with him, and he bent down and he said to Maceo, "May I get a picture with you?" He didn't care that we had asked, he cared that my son had asked. And it was just such a beautiful sight. These two people really made a huge impact on me and our family at that conference, and I'm so grateful to them. Let's see. So diagnoses. So twice exceptional diagnoses. Sometimes there are misdiagnoses. It's real, it happens. And in fact, I was misdiagnosed for several years as having bipolar disorder, which I absolutely do not have. And because of that misdiagnosis, I took medication for several years. The reason I found out I actually wasn't is when I decided to become pregnant with my child. I did not want to take the medications, even though they insisted I should, and I did great. And then, you know, sometime way after that, when we started looking at twice exceptional, I realized, oh, ding, 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 overexcitabilities, ADHD, etc. So misdiagnosis is a very real thing. And I think, you know, we have professionals who do their best and try really hard to support our kids with special needs, but sometimes it just feels like you're picking a card, any random card. And these are some of the things that my son has been diagnosed with. Auditory processing disorder, motor dyspraxia, mild TBI, developmental stuttering, articulation disorder, expressive language delay, dyslexia, sensory processing disorder, attention hyperactivity disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, depression, intermittent exotropia, convergence insufficiency, growth hormone deficiency, autism spectrum disorder, and mild sleep apnea. So when you start looking at all these things, how do you support your child? What do you need to do? And it's kind of scary. So here is more from my son. This is what he'd like a teacher, what attributes a teacher should have for a student who is, oh shoot, sorry, let me go back, twice exceptional. How do I make this work? Nope. Is it where? Ah, there we go.
I think they need to be able to keep the room quiet, because a loud room I cannot work in easily. And that can really affect me. Let's see. They need to have a little bit of a sense of humor, just because it's more fun for the entire class if they're a little bit fun. But they can't have too much, because otherwise it gets loud. I like it when they use different types. So like, one of my teachers, they'll draw on the board and talk. They'll write names and talk and draw a picture at the same type of time. So everybody gets something out of that. And I think that's really important.
Why?
Everybody learns differently.
And so public school supports for twice exceptional students include having an advanced learning plan, which is for the area of gifted identification, an IEP if they qualify for one, or a Section 504 plan, which is a plan that it does not use federal dollars to support it, but allows for a student to have accommodations for a specific disability. In private schools are also plans that are put into place. They're just not called 504 plans or an IEP, but maybe a special student learning plan, for example. So private schools also support students with twice exceptionality. So one of the things I think is important to know is students that benefit from social emotional support and accommodations to support areas of weakness. And for example, this would be help with organization, working memory, and fluency. Those pieces in 2E students in particular seem to pop up. So we have processing speeds, which are lower, and we have working memories, which are lower than the other areas in a full scale IQ. So these are areas that we need to support. Accommodations are definitely considered beneficial when the needs are based on relative weaknesses. And even though there are similarities in twice exceptional brains, individual strengths and weaknesses are different among 2E students, even with the same category of disability. So accommodations really have to consider this. It's kind of like you've met one 2E student, you've met one 2E student. That's just how it is. Every kid is different. Students also definitely seem to prefer choice and benefit from academic tasks that de-emphasize speed and fluency. For example, math minutes, oral reading fluency. And accessing accommodations is not necessarily easy. And even when they are accessible, I know students don't always take advantage of them because they don't want to look different. And that's that stigma of twice exceptional. People see them as an intelligent student and they don't want to have the accommodation because then, oh my gosh, they might think I'm not smart. So how can teachers support your learning?
Everybody is a little different, but in general, I've noticed teach it in multiple different ways. Do visual. Sometimes do a video, sometimes do an experiment, whatever. Also, please give them fidgets. It really helps. I'm petting Menomina, that's close enough. I just need to move.
So when you review potential accommodations for your child, they know what's going to work for them and they should have a seat at the table when you're going through and deciding on those pieces. It's really important that they have buy-in and that you're not telling them, oh, you will benefit from this, because our gifted students, they know what they need. To be successful, 2E students need their strengths emphasized before any weaknesses are addressed. And again, if I could go back in time, I really wish I would have done more of this. So we have qualities not measured by tests, and you'll see a lot of these in our 2E kids: the persistence, curiosity, enthusiasm, courage, leadership, creativity, civic-minded, etc. These are things that don't show up on any kinds of tests, but these are pieces that show up on a 2E kid maybe more readily sometimes than in other students. Just a hunch. So misdiagnosis is real. I told you about that, but also you can be gifted and have a disability. You can be gifted with dyslexia, and there is some research that dyslexia is more common among gifted people in spatially oriented occupations. So my sister, who also has dyslexia, she is outstanding in her field. She is a packaging engineer, and it is all visual spatial. And wow, she's like really good at it. So this is just something to be aware of, that yes, misdiagnosis is real, but also it is possible to be gifted with a true disability. Gifted ADHD or both. Here are some things that we talk about: gifted behaviors and then the contrasting ADHD behaviors. And you can look at them, comparing them back and forth. And which one is it? Or is it both? Could you have ADHD and be gifted? Yes, absolutely. The nervous system of ADHD students is really interesting. And I found that if you want to learn about what makes a student tick, this is a really important information to know. It's from William Dobson, I believe is the name. He's out here in Denver someplace. I saw him speak several years ago. And to me, it was very life-changing because I suddenly figured out that, yes, I procrastinate. And now I know why, because my neurological system is different than somebody who is just going to do the work because they're supposed to do the work. So here's what they talk about. Interest. I'm very activated by interest, being ADHD. If it's interesting, I'm there, I'm on it. Importance does not matter. I don't care if the teacher says it's important. I don't care if my husband thinks it's important or anything. I'm not interested. I don't want to do it. It's really hard to start doing something I'm not interested in. Challenge. This is the whole old-fashioned, I think people have seen the memes, you know, hold my beer, watch me kind of thing. That's what this is. You tell me I can't, oh yes, I will. I remember in younger days, a friend told me I couldn't play a certain song when I was taking piano lessons. Now, granted, I couldn't read the music, still can't. I had to write all the notes in, but she told me I couldn't do it because I hadn't taken piano long enough, and there was no way I was going to not be able to do it. So I learned the song. And it was the challenge or the competition that really motivated me to do something. Oops, go back. Oh, go back. Shoot, sorry. Let me go back again. Let me try that one more time. I don't know how to make it work. Okay, well, anyway, going back. So the other thing that happens is if it's new and novel, I'm very interested and engaged. It's super easy to be really with it and on it when it's novel and new. It's very activating, and I get very involved and want to participate. And then the last one is urgency. And that is probably my primary motivation, urgency, because if it's due today, then I will get it done today. But I can have 3 weeks and I know it's coming up and I know it's coming up and I know it's coming up and I'm still not doing it. But when the time is there and I have to get it done, I will get it done. So knowing how your nervous system works and which one of these work best for you, you can use that to your advantage in how you get things done. In our house, urgency plays a big role in when we have company over and house cleaning. Until somebody is coming to the house, our house isn't necessarily the most picked up house. Now it's clean, but we definitely have clutter. And when I know company is coming, that's when everything gets picked up and put away. Sometimes in boxes, but picked up. So the other thing is gifted with ASD or autism spectrum disorder. This is one thing that has been very interesting to me and I've thought about a long time. This is a differences between giftedness and Asperger's disorder. And the big piece that I have discovered is that it's the pragmatic language piece that is really driving the Asperger's piece versus the gifted piece. And there's a link for this if you're interested in the slideshow. You can click there to get this information, as well as the article about this, which is a good read. So this is kind of where we've been. My son's experienced by the numbers. So school placements since from kindergarten to ninth grade are 8. Total diagnosis from 2 to 14. He's had 15 of them. Mental health therapists and psychiatrists who were not a good fit, 6. Nope, 8, sorry, 8. Individual family service plan, he's had 1. Preschool IEP, he's had 1. Medications prescribed, 6. Full educational evaluation resulting in no IEP through the school, 1. A full educational evaluation resulting in an IEP, 2, because, well, technically 2, when you're looking at the preschool IEP and then the standard school IEP. Eligibility criteria is met on the state of Colorado's areas of disability, 5. Private pay therapies that we have done throughout the years, 6. OT, PT, OT gymnastics, feeding group, speech language, vision therapy, social group. And I didn't remember to include private therapy, talking therapy. And then times we've considered inpatient, outpatient hospitalization, 2. And also suicidal statements, 2. So it's been a long haul. Things I've learned. These are just kind of, literally, these were off the top of my head. And I think that there are things that you probably have heard, but the first one is really, you need to take time for yourself. There's something called compassion fatigue that I learned in a mom's group that I was in for moms with students who have special needs. And compassion fatigue is if you're spending so much time supporting and trying to make everything right for your child and your family, you get lost in the shuffle and you really need to take time for yourself. Cannot recommend it more. And even if it's just like, I'm going to make a cup of coffee and sit down, I'm going to take a nap for 10 minutes. You need to take care of yourself. You need time to mourn. this is a big one, because when you have a student who is, or a child who is different, or you also yourself, and you're expecting great things and it doesn't happen the way you expect, that morning is super important, because it is somewhat of a loss, and it's normal to be sad and to mourn that. Listen to your gut. You know your child. You know your child. You know your child. If the doctor is saying, no, I don't see that, you need to keep going, find another doctor. You know your gut, listen to it and pursue that, because doctors and specialists don't always understand the correlation between giftedness and disabilities. And it's really hard to find people who understand your child, which is why we had been through so many different therapists, because they didn't get it. We finally found one who was excellent. Of course, you want to find your tribe. It's really lonely being gifted, being twice exceptional, having that in your life with your child. It can be very, very lonely, and people may not understand. It is essential that you find people who understand what you're going through so that you have that support system. It takes a long time. It took us probably, over 10 years for us to find people that really got it after my son was born. And it was a long and lonely road. So whatever you can do to get involved with anything that has to do with gifted and twice exceptional education, go for it, because you're going to find your tribe. Collaborate with experts, specialists, and teachers. This is huge. When I go to meetings, I try to remember to bring snacks. I don't always remember, but I try to. Because it just shows that you're appreciative, and it's just a way to build that collaborative piece and appreciation with them. Working with an advocate is particularly important, and ARC, the ARC of Colorado, has several locations, and we have used them because I have found, for me, advocating for my own child is incredibly challenging and difficult because I'm too emotional. And that's, of course, because I'm a mom. So I need somebody to come in and be that support person to advocate for my son when I can't, because all I want to do is cry. Create a mantra. This, again, is also something I've done. One of mine is, it doesn't have to be perfect, because I have to spend a lot of time reminding myself of that. And the other piece is that I will say is, I'm doing the best that I can with what I've got. And to give myself permission to know that, yes, I really am doing the best I can. And that has helped me. I have to remember to do those mantras when I start getting stressed, when I have to take a deep breath. I can say those to myself to calm myself down. And then the last thing, ask for support. People will give it to you. Just have to ask for support. That is huge, because you can't do this alone. Some books that I would highly recommend are Misdiagnosis, From Emotions to Advocacy, and Living with Intensity. All of these are really great resources for our 2E students and families. I also have made a list of other resources that are incredibly helpful and provide a lot of great information. ARC, Davidson Institute, Grammarly, which I can't live without. Got through my whole master's program using Grammarly because I misspell, mistype, whatever. Learning Ally, so audiobooks. There's also one that just came out. It's a Chrome extension called Speechify, which is similar to Google Read Write, and I would recommend looking into that. It's something I think is pretty good. SANG has links for mental health providers in your area, so that's a really great place to start if you're looking for outside support for families and for students and one-on-one therapy. These are some other places you can get information: Twice Exceptional Advocacy, Twice Exceptional Dilemma, just some good information for people. More information. These are the Twice Exceptional Student Guides from the state of Colorado, level 1 and level 2. Again, they have those classes, but you can also get the books and read them. They're available in PDF form. They're wonderful. Yes is the purpose is the youth examples of self-advocacy, and it's designed for students to recognize their strengths and also their weaknesses, but to provide them confidence and tools so they can become self-advocates in their own learning. And then Rights Law is a great website with lots of fantastic information about twice exceptional students and gifted and special ed. One of the other pieces, because we found that Love and Logic does not work I can tell you that I know exactly when it stopped, when I told my son to do something or he could do something else. And he looked at me and said at 4, you can stop doing that or you can be extinct. So what we found is that collaborative problem solving is a really great space or a great way to work with your child to come up with solutions to things that are challenging and difficult. And the philosophy behind this are kids do well if they can. And then there's a video, again, talking about collaborative problem solving, and I'm not going to show it. These are references from all of the information that I presented today. And there's one section that didn't show up that I wanted to share. Let me just find it really quickly. I apologize. It must have been in the notes somewhere and I'm trying to figure out where it went. Let me just go through really fast. Go back. Come on. I apologize because I know I had it in here unless I maybe deleted it on accident. I'm not finding it. Well, I'm going to tell you, it's by this guy, Potsma. He has some information that's super fantastic about the differences of twice exceptional brains. And it's fascinating information. And when I find it, I can add it to this because for some reason it didn't make it in my notes, which I wanted to talk to you about. But there's some neurological differences definitely in the twice exceptional brain that I think are really important to be aware of. I would like to open it up for questions if anybody has any.
Perfect, great, thank you so much. Well, before you stop sharing your screen, can you go back? We had the question, what were the 3 2E books from a minute ago? So could you just put those up, please? Yep. There they are. Misdiagnosis, From Emotions to Advocacy and Living with Intensity. And then we'll have you please just stop sharing your screen so we can see you a little better.
Yeah. Oh. Okay, escape, stop share. Okay.
Good job. Good job. Somebody else asked if they could have access to your slideshow.
Yes.
Is there an email they could reach out to you?
Yep, they can send it to, I'll put it in the chat.
So if you put it in the chat here, then I will write it in the chat on Facebook. So that works perfect.
Okay. Oh, it's really hard to see. I really need my glasses that I lost at NAGC. I really hope that's it. And you can also put in my work address too, because
perfect.
Who knows, maybe it'll go there too. So these are probably the 2 that are best.
Okay, there's the first one. And here is the second one.
So I can't find the information.
And Jen Strickland said, first Facebook Live, but don't let it be the last. You're so relatable and did a fantastic job. And Rose Medina said, thanks so much for the resources and for sharing your personal experience. I think one of the questions, you know, that I had in terms of listening to you, you had talked about how it's taken you a really long time to kind of find your people and find the people who really got it, and that it really took a decade.
Yes.
And so I guess what advice would you give to those people who are raising a 2E child? Because I think one, just like I also, one of my children is 2E, and so there a lot of those things just kind of struck some personal notes with me on just some of those difficulties, right? But like, how would you, so what would you say to somebody who doesn't have any people who get it? Like, how did you find that? What would you say to do?
I would say that you join your affiliate groups for CAGT, because you're going to find people there who are like-minded. Go to anything that you can that's available, any events. It doesn't matter if it's in your affiliate. If you're in Douglas County and Jeffco's offering something, go. You find your people. My people are all over the state now because I've met people going to events and putting myself out there and risking it, because my family doesn't get it, with the exception of one brother who finally now gets it because his son has just been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, and he was also very bright. So he finally understands the struggles that we've been going through. But the rest of my family, they don't understand, and that's hard. And so it's nice that I've made this tribe and this family so I can talk to people about what I'm going through, and also finding a therapist for yourself. Very important.
Good advice. And I think that does touch on like an interesting point, whether it's friends or families, when you have people around you in your life who don't understand. And I know you had talked a lot about like what some of the mantras are, or that you kind of do that positive self-talk. So yes. What are some of the things that you say to yourself? It's always interesting to hear people's mantras.
Those are the two that I say the most often, because, and I'm learning, and I wish I would have learned this at a younger age. And I wish I would have also, going back, taught my son how to do that deep breathing sooner than later. As an adult, that's when I learned how to start doing deep breathing to bring my stress and anxiety level down. Mm-hmm. And so I have to remind myself, okay, take a breath. Take a breath. It's okay. It's going to be okay. Take a breath. And so those are things that, help me. And I'll tell you what doesn't help is when somebody tells me to calm down. You want to piss me off, that's how you do it. So I'm upset for a reason. I need to be acknowledged, and then I need to be able to take breaths and calm down. Mm-hmm. So that's it.
And that's an interesting point too, right? Because I think we've all been there, where the worst thing you can say is, you need to calm down, or the dreaded, are you tired, or are you hungry? And so I think my last question is just around, so you talked about wishing that early on that you had paid more attention to a strength-based approach for your son. Yes. And I firmly believe in that as well. And I think that many people in the gifted field, that resonates to us, because gifted is all about a strength-based approach. Yep. But many schools and many teachers are not trained in a strength-based approach, right? And so it still really is unfortunately fairly deficit-based. So I guess, what advice would you have for the people who are watching this presentation on, like, parents and educators on how to have that strength-based approach with 2E? Just some practical pieces, or what you wish you had done. How could you, if you were to do it over? I guess it's kind of two questions. Number one, from like the educator stance, what would the advice be for making sure that you have a strength-based approach to all of your students? And then from a parent-based approach, how do you make sure that you're advocating for a strength-based approach for your 2E child? Okay,
I'll see if I can remember all that and answer.
That's okay. It's kind of a roundabout 2-part question, but the first one was like, so from an educator standpoint, advice around strength-based programming.
Okay, from educator standpoint, one of the things that I try to do as a teacher, and I work with my teachers in my district, for students to have an opportunity to pursue an area of interest or passion, and that they can be doing that in their classroom. They're gifted every day. So I want to make sure they have opportunities to go and follow things that they want to do. One of the things that happened with my son, he's really interested in physics. He wanted that as an ALP goal for 3rd grade, I think it was. And they decided to give him information and to learn about volcanoes. Well, that wasn't what he wanted to learn, and he did nothing with it because he wanted physics. Now, granted, they probably couldn't give him the information he needed about physics, because God knows I was on Google trying to figure out what terminal velocity was and trying to explain that. So not my strength area. So I think that you have to allow for a student to be participatory in their own learning and to pursue areas that they're interested in. And there isn't anything wrong with whatever they want to do, even if it's not in their gifted identification area. I think that's also truly important, because things change, interests change, and they can develop more from having those opportunities at school. So we had a student who was really interested in learning how to knit. And, you know, she learned so much socially, emotionally from her experience learning how to knit. It wasn't even about the knitting. It was about learning how to accept mistakes, go back and fix things, and not be upset with yourself. I mean, she made this amazing growth, and it was knitting, which nobody would think would be a good thing for education, but it is. So I would say that.
I think that's a huge point. So essentially like asking the kids and actually then listening to them.
Yeah.
And then from a parent perspective, so in that situation, if you were to just even take that scenario, right? He was on an ALP, this is what he wanted, he didn't get it. How do you advocate for that?
You know, that's where the advocate comes in, because I'm too emotional to advocate for my own son, and all I want to do is cry. Truly. So that's where you find your tribe, you find your support, you have someone come in and help you, because it's really hard to do it on your own.
It's a lonely battle. And I think it kind of comes into with Hector Rivera had just talked about this too, in terms of what advice do you have for families with 2E kids talking with other family members? So like you talked about, like sometimes they just don't get it, right? But how do you talk to them? Like,
you know, I do my best to explain, hey, this is what works. This is what we're trying. I need to parent my child the way I need to parent my child. And what you did work for you, but it doesn't work for our situation. And setting those limits, which is really uncomfortable, especially for our older generation who are all pull yourself up by the bootstraps and figure it out. Suck it up, buttercup, which is great, because you do have to do that sometimes. But you know what? There's some other extenuating circumstances that you have to consider, and how do you create that balance? So, and sometimes I feel like I'm having to protect my child from certain situations within my family, you know, because they're not getting that he's not going to eat anything that they've made, because he can't even walk in the room because it smells too strong and funny to him, and it makes him want to vomit. They don't get that. So you know what? I bring my own food. We bring food to the restaurant, whatever. We accommodate, which I know that seems like we're spoiling him, but we're not. That's who he is, and that's what we have to do. So, and I don't apologize for it.
Letting them be unapologetically them and supporting them.
Yep. Yes. Good summary. You're very good at that.
One final question, but this one's kind of around, you know, so many of our 2E students, sometimes they receive services in school, sometimes out of school, sometimes a combination of both in and out of school. But how do you advocate for attendance? So when you have OT, PT, etc., therapy, and the nearest pediatric specialists are over 45 minutes from the school, they miss a lot of class. So what would your recommendation be there?
Well, when I was teaching, I had a classroom cluster, and I had a student who was doing therapy. And when she was gone for therapy, I counted that as an assignment. I didn't make her do makeup work, because it's not fair. Our kids are doing so much extra outside of school a lot of times, that to hold them to that standard of getting what they need, of doing what's being done in school, they're getting what they need so they can be successful in school. And to punish them for not doing the schoolwork is inappropriate. And I truly believe that if you have a student who's doing therapy and they're missing stuff, it should be excused.
Absolutely. I agree. And the other thing that I would just add on to that, that question came from Jen Strickland, would be that, like as an administrator, you can, if they're on a 504 or an IEP, then you can actually write that into their plan, that all absences that are in like direct alignment to something like that, that they're automatically excused absences, and then you just grade for mastery so they don't have to make up any work. That is all the time that we have today. So thank you so much to Connolly Sherwood. You did a great job. Thank you for sharing your personal experience and journey with us. And we go ahead and log off Facebook. So everybody have a wonderful night, and thank you for joining us for our conversations with CAGT.
Thank you.